when I've made complaints to banks or utilities, all I'm expecting is the person receiving the complaint to treat me as if they themselves would want to be treated in that same situation. I wonder whether we overcomplicate things too much. All the person receiving the complaint should do is treat the person as if they would want to be treated, take ownership of the problem, and do what they say they would do. And I think it all comes down to the quality of the staff, frankly. I know there's a volume issue in terms of the problems you've got, but I wonder whether there's the quality of staff. I'm talking here of soft skills that are able to handle complaints in a common sense and empathetic and comprehensive way.
Great, thanks. Sally, perhaps you'd like to comment on that? That seems to touch on many of the themes that you raised.
I think that's right, and I mean I think that's what this kind of idea of perceived justice kind of forces us to consider, really, to look at what we need to do about handling complaints in a much more rounded way, in a much more comprehensive way, so that we're not completely focused on what's the compensation that somebody's going to get, but we're focusing on the person, as a whole, and thinking about their perceptions and how they feel about things, and how having to go through this complaint process is reflecting on them and their self-esteem and their dignity, and ensuring that complaint handlers kind of think about all of those things as well. So that's why I think this kind of model of perceived justice is quite a useful one for us to be thinking about. And I think that Douglas is absolutely right. At the end of the day, it's kind of about those cultural issues. We behave the way that we do in organisations because of the culture in the organisation that tells us that when you look at certain things or you consider certain things, they mean this, and therefore responding in this way is the appropriate way to respond. And maybe some of those cultural ideas need to be changed or need to be updated. So I don't think this is something which necessarily can just be attacked at the level of kind of whitewash, telling people to do something quite superficial. You do really need to look at kind of what underlies this and what are the cultural norms that need to be addressed in order to get people to think differently about some of these issues.
I think just in relation to the soft skills, it's such an important point, and that is why we've been approached on many occasions to develop training. It's been very much around the soft skills that people have been wanting, because obviously they can get the information about financial services from other organisations, but we've been able to help quite a bit with developing those soft skills, and a lot of the work that Sally's been doing has been very much around the communication and persuasion kind of areas.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that actually is that, when we're in organisations, we just forget. We forget what it's like to not be in that organisation. We forget what it's like to not know about these things. So we forget how to kind of deal with people who don't have the knowledge that we have, who don't come from the cultural background that we do. And I think, sometimes it's just kind of being aware of that.
Just so one other point, really, just to back up exactly what you said. One of the most interesting things that's come out, in my view, of the work that's been done, probably in the last 3 or 4 months, has been what we've seen is across the complaint handling life cycle, for those firms that have, in essence, some of the worst customer feedback, when you actually turn it around and look at what we call voice of the operation, so the feedback that you get from staff, those are the very organisations that think they are the most customer-centric, and it's seeing this gap, this delta between the two areas that has become so fascinating. And I guess the key thing is how you re-educate, how you change the culture, to Douglas's point, to address that and bring in a stronger conduct culture that is more aligned to the customer.
And I think some of the examples that Carol was talking about are really, really interesting. These ideas of people collaborating together so that people inside organisations can actually get exposed to, what it feels like to make a complaint and what this experience is really like. I thought some of that was really interesting about the collaboration.
We included some material which was around a changing relationship that should be taking place within organisations, and thinking about how we can work with people, with consumers, customers, patients, whatever they may be, rather than just delivering things to them or for them, work with them and co-design and co-produce things that are much more effective for the future. and it could be very exciting and interesting.